So today we are going to talk about spinal poisons. We have already discussed about neurotoxins earlier, right? So today we'll be discussing about the neurotoxins as such. It's a spinal poison. We all are aware of that. So why is it a spinal poison? Is basically for a very simple reason that it acts on the spinal cord. Previously, we have learned about poisons which act on the cerebellum, known as cerebral poisons, SID, if you remember, somniferous, inebriants, and deliriants. Now we have moved on to another type of neuropoison, which is the spinal poison. So, since this poison acts on spinal cord, the motor nerves arising from those spinal cords are controlled. Hence, it results in contraction of all the muscles that are supplied by the spinal cord. So this is further classified into stimulant spinal poisons and the depressant spinal poisons. Don't worry much about these classifications because it's very simple to understand. The stimulant will cause spasms and convulsions. So if you see spasms and convulsions, the people are very active, they're moving, it's painful. Hence the name stimulant. The other one is the depressant spinal poison, which causes paralysis. That's the pause, or there's loss of sensation. Both of these are not painful, so they are hence the depressant spinal poisons. We'll not talk much about depressant spinal poisons, but today's focus would be on this plant. This plant is Strychnus nox vomica. The name is pretty difficult to memorize at the first, but once you read about it more and more, the name will be at the tip of your tongue. It's famously known as strychnine. You might have heard about this plant. So first we'll try and understand the plant, what it is. Okay, let me show you the picture of this plant. It's a medium-sized deciduous plant, straight trunks. So we'll see the flower directly. Okay, look at the leaves. The leaves are flat at the base and pointed at the tip. It's leathery. It looks like a shiny leather. In fact, it's not rough surfaced. The flowers are white, and it has a fruit. This fruit we'll talk about. This, have you ever seen this? It looks like somewhat like what we call halwabet, or the yellow berries. So this is one of the reason that accidental poisoning is very common with this plant. It looks like a fruit that can be consumed easily. But yes, monkeys and birds love this plant. They don't die, of course. They enjoy this as a food. But for humans, it's a poison. So the fruit, it's a round berry, smooth, not shiny. Initially, it's green in color, but when it matures, it becomes orange. This is what it would look like when it's not ripe, but later it looks something like this. So this is the fruit of a strychnine plant, and inside this fruit, you have seeds which are disc-shaped. This is the crust section of the fruit. So if you look at the seeds, these are aligned in rows like these. So since it's a crust section, when you remove the pulp, the seed would look something like this. This is a dried fruit. So these seeds is what is rich with the strychnine, the chemical compound strychnine, that's very much present in these seeds, whereas strychnine is very less present in leaves and bark. Okay. So these seeds, when you remove it and dry it, it looks like this. So it's dry. It has some small furry appearance. It looks shiny in this picture, but it has a small fur, hairy. It's a bit hairy as well. If you feel it, you can feel that roughness. But what's interesting about these seeds are that they are infamously known as the dog buttons. Why are they called dog buttons? Is not with the obvious reason that it looks like a dog food. Yes, of course, it looks like the dog's food that we feed our dogs. But these seeds were used by metropolitans of different cities to kill stray dogs. The Batame in Busia Kukuroro, they used to kill these dogs by using these seeds. It might sound nasty, inhuman. Some animal activists might not like it, but yes, previously for few days they used to feed biscuits, and on the third day or the fourth day they used to spread these all over the street. So dogs initially were happy with the biscuits being served used to accidentally consume this initially, and that resulted in, okay, viewers discretion advised, be careful with the pictures, make sure that your family members are not around. Now these days it's heard that these seeds have been powdered and then being used in tip of the dart to kill the same dogs. Like they don't feed them anymore, but these powders are used to, of course, uh, kill the dogs till date. Of course, they do it clandestinely, and some claim that they don't do it. Now, if you look at this picture carefully, you can see that the dog is in the state of rigidity. I suppose, I'm not sure, but it could be due to the cadaveric spasm, if you remember, the excitatory activities before death, resulting in stiffening of the muscles before it passes through the period of primary flaccidity and hyperexcitability state. We'll talk about this more in postmortem caloricity. So these strychnine seeds are hence infamously or loosely known as the dog buttons. So moving on to the active principles, we have strychnine, brucine, and loganin. Of these three, the first two are the alkaloids, and last one is the glucoside. So every active principles or the toxins are made up of these two parts. First is the alkaloids, and second is the glucoside. So combination of these forms all the toxins, the active principles. So of these three, the most powerful one, the most potent one is strychnine, which is of course present in the seed. It's not that a person won't be poisoned with bark or leaves; they do, but the conditions could be serious if it's seeds, if it's strychnine. So how does it work? I have left a link of a YouTube video on your chat room. You can go click that link after the class and see how it works. But just for your basic understanding, it acts on anterior horn cells of the spinal cord, thereby affecting the motor nerves that control the muscle contractions. Uh, all you have to do is remember the word glycine for your MCQs, because that's where the MCQ questions usually fall on. You can see these things are marked with red. So you already know from previous classes that anything that's marked red uh, is important for your exams. So from examination point of view as well, you have to be careful that this glycine, the inhibitory neurotransmitter, is prevented from its acting. So this widespread inhibition of glycine is what will result in the reflex excitability of all these muscles. So there's alternate convulsions and spasms which break in between. It's not continuous. So what is the fatal dose? The fatal dose is not much have been said about bark and leaves, but yes, they say that 1 to 3 seeds would cause death. But if you swallow the whole seed, nothing might happen because it usually can't surpass the digestive enzymes can't break the seeds or the pericarp of the seeds. So the pericarp is less harmless. So as we have in Nepali saying, "Jasto khaye teste ayo," would be the right way to understand it. So if the seeds are not chewed and just swallowed, it might have very very less effect. It might come out the way it is, right? Mm, and the fatal period is very less. You can see that once someone consumes it, it just takes 1 to 2 hours uh, for death to occur. So these seeds have also been used in the form of homicidal poisons, have been tried and tested, but it was a big failure because of the taste that it has, because it's very bitter to taste, as the people who have tried it said. It's not that I've tried it, but there are people who've tried it and said that it's bitter to taste. So are you guys listening, man? Can you unmute and let me know if you are listening?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes,
Yes,
No
sir.
problem so
yes,
far.
sir.
Yes.
No problem so far. Yes. We'll move on to the clinical manifestations now. We won't allow anyone in now from the class into the classroom. So the most important thing is once someone ingests the seed, first thing that the person will have is some episode of anxiety. That fear factor is there. So increased heartbeat would be the first sign, followed by the epigastric pain when it goes through digestion. Then something being stuck on the throat, the sensation of choking is there, and the pupil starts to dilate initially. After some time, the froth will start drooling from the mouth because of the spasm of muscles around the cheek and the face. The person can't hold his saliva. So the froth and saliva starts drooling out. There's mild muscle pains and twitches and spasm. So this pain is what will get the person to the hospital. After that, of course, the fever is there, hyperactivity, and with time you will see something known as opisthotonus or pleurothotonus. Both of these words might sound familiar to you from your classes on tetanus. Uh, just for your view, opisthotonus is backward arcing of the body, uh, and pleurothotonus is sideways arcing of the body. Uh, you can also see hip pus like you see in aconite poisoning. The hip pus is alternate dilation and constriction of pupil. Um, the spasmodic, it's also seen in aconite, but here also it's common. Now, the most important thing is the rhizus sardonicus. This is the involuntary smile, also known as the Satan's smile, sardonic smile, devil's grin. All of these are the features that are seen on the mouth. The angles of the mouth are drawn backwards due to sustained spasm of facial muscles. This is rhizus sardonicus. We all know what a devil's grin or a Satan's smile is. Uh, of course, we have seen it, man. Come on. This is what is a devil's smile famous for, and the Satan's grin. But this is what actually it would look like in a case of rhizus sardonicus, where you can see that the mouth is drawn backward on both the angles. Both the ends of the lips on right and left have been stressed out. This is what it would look from sideways. So this is one of the common. And next is, of course, the trismus or the locked jaw, also at the temporomandibular junction. There is the restriction of the movement of the jaw occurs. It's also due to the muscle spasms take place. Now, since you see that the history, the features of strychnine poisoning are similar to that of tetanus, so we need to differentiate whether a person that has just walked in suffered from tetanus or was it due to strychnine poisoning. So first thing to differentiate, of course, is the history. So with strychnine poisoning, there will be history of the person swallowing some seed, trying new fruit. Um, Whereas with tetanus, there might be a history of injury associated with it. Mm, In case of strychnine, the onset is very fast. As you've seen earlier, that once person ingested, there is anxiety, abdominal pain, and then the person rushes to hospital because of muscular pain. Whereas in tetanus, it might occur 1 day or 2 days later. Okay, convulsions in strychnine, all the muscles goes into spasm at once, but in tetanus it's gradual. It starts from the neck rigidity, followed towards the spine and slowly towards the other extremities. But with strychnine, it's generalized throughout the body. Another feature is locked jaw, which is initially in strychnine, it's seen as an earlier symptom, but with tetanus, it's a late feature. What's interesting is this muscle spasm. If you see that with strychnine, there is contraction of muscles followed by relaxation, again contraction and then relaxation. Whereas with tetanus, the constriction is continuous throughout, so muscles tend to be fatigued more fast in tetanus. Whereas with strychnine, it's alternate, which is even more strenuous. It's like lifting a barbell for mm, 10 minutes continuously, not pulling it down, and doing the reps. Okay, so that occurs few hours after stitching. It again depends on the quantity, dose, and all those factors that we've studied earlier about the factors affecting in the role of a poison. But yes, the death is very fast in this, and the tests that can differentiate are chemical analysis for presence of strychnine or microbiology test for the presence of tetanus bacilli. How would you manage this case is again start with ABC, but what you have to keep in mind is that the person should be kept in a dark room, a quiet room. Of course, due to the spasmodic pupil, the person's eye is less reactive to the bright lights, so the dark room is preferred. Barbiturates to control the spasm, short-acting muscle relaxants, and decontamination only if the duration of ingestion of the poison till the hospital is few hours. After that, there's no point trying to decontaminate it using the gastric lavage. And morphine should never be injected. Just remember that the contraindication is morphine. Cause of death, of course, is respiratory failure. But how this respiratory failure occurs is because of spasm of respiratory muscles. The diaphragm, the chest muscles, the cuff muscles, all of these muscles go into spasm. Thereby, the person will have difficulty in inspiration and expiration. And that's when the oxygen carrying capacity is compromised throughout the body. Post-mortem appearance, of course, there is rigor mortis, but here you'll see cadaveric spasm because of hyperexcitability of the muscles. You may have post-mortem caloricity, and then cyanosis, of course, is, but it's not so specific. Post-mortem caloricity, I guess you guys remember it very well. If not, I request you to go back to your notes. These 2 points keep appearing: cadaveric spasm, post-mortem caloricity, and these are also important points for your exams and for your future as well, to remember the mechanism behind it and how does it occur, under what conditions. Internally, there is nothing much that you can see except for the congestion of gastric mucosa, edema. All these are non-specific findings, but yes, the fragments of the seeds might be found within the alimentary canal if it has not been completely digested. It again depends on the amount of seed that the person has consumed. Okay. And the interesting thing about muscles is that sometimes you can see petechial hemorrhages or small blood deposits within the muscle fibers, also due to rupture of these muscle fibers during contractions. Now, the medical legal significance. Why are we studying this poison in forensic medicine? Is because uh, of these following reasons. Told you earlier, accidental poisoning is very common with this because you have seen the fruit. That fruit resembles many other fruits that we eat. So there are chances that people going for trekking, hiking, or into the jungles, grazing their cattle are likely to consume these fruits. Next is, of course, the dog buttons, and it also used as rodenticide. So there are chances that people might poison him or herself. The death is very painful because of, you can imagine, the constriction of all the muscles at the same time, again release, again constrict. So yes, it's a painful death. The homicidal use of this is very rare because of its taste. Of course, people who would be consuming it would identify that the food is not so normal to taste until and unless, of course, you mix it with some food which is bitter. Rarely it's mixed with cocaine and heroin. These are done by peddlers to increase the volume. So it's turned into a powder and then mixed with heroin to increase the weight of the compound that they are selling. And people go smoke it and snort it and then may come down to hospital with a case which is totally absurd because there'll be a history of heroin and then the features are that of tetanus. So we have to be careful with this as well. So I guess that's it for the day. Uh, we've had a very short and brief class. Uh, I hope you enjoyed the class. I'll just move on with any queries if you have. You can unmute yourself and then we'll continue with the class. Meanwhile, I'll pause the recording.